Hi, my name's Hannah Elwood and I'm a photography student at Sheffield Hallam University, and I'm going to be talking about my project named Introspection. Initially I wanted to explore the human psyche and the impact it has on the human condition, individually and collectively and consciously and unconsciously. I began to think about key events and characteristics that compose the human experience: birth, growth, emotion, conflict, aspirations and mortality. But as my project progressed, I wanted to be able to creatively depict mortality in my work. I think I was drawn to the topic because it's something that can't be avoided. Usually it sparks some sort of reaction or emotion in people. As a species, we're constantly trying to have some insight into ourselves and our place in the universe, and it can be seen in different religions that there's some sort of life after death. And taking inspiration from that, I wanted to capture the human consciousness transcending our bodies. I was heavily inspired by Dwayne Michael's piece, The Spirit Leaving the Body. It has quite a calming, peaceful vibe to it, and I wanted to incorporate that into my work, despite it being a sublime topic. He said, "What I cannot see is infinitely more important than what I can see." I think it's a really good outlook to have, because I think as a species we're constantly relying on our senses and things that can be proven, but that in itself is limited. So the idea of there being something more than what we can perceive fascinates me. I think during the pandemic we've collectively all probably thought about mortality more than usual, and probably all have our own outlook on what happens after we die. I think whether you believe in an afterlife or not, it's always quite enlightening to do some introspection when the conversation does arise. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the exhibition.
Hi, my name is Liam Spinks. I'm a second year photography student at Sheffield Hallam University. So I'm going to be talking about my current project that I'm doing for the exhibition, which is called Rave Lockdown. And throughout the pandemic, I've been documenting the rave scene and seeing how it's affected people, DJs and venues. So I started by taking photos of friends who go to raves and asking them to wear clothes that they go to these events in, because I really wanted to capture them as a person and make them comfortable. So further into my research, I found a student DJ named Ari, who did a 48-hour live stream raising money for the NHS, during the first lockdown. And I really wanted to recapture that moment. So we booked a day to shoot, and so he set up his decks, his speakers, but on the day it was really sunny. The sun was peeking over his wall. So I set up a softbox with a speed light, and when I took that photo, there was a really nice stream of light coming through Ari, and it kind of represented the live streams during the first lockdown and DJs mixing. This then led me on to getting access to a new venue in Sheffield called Driedworks, who have been also struggling throughout the pandemic because of not getting funding from the government. So they had to create a GoFundMe page to raise money to keep their business going. When I took photos in the venue, I wanted it to be empty to make it seem ghostly and represent that raves haven't been on for a year. So yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the exhibition.
My name is Charlotte Turnock. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my project. So my project stemmed, I think, from the fact that I think it's really important to capture and document things around us that won't be around forever, such as petrol stations. And one day these are just going to be things we tell the younger generations about, but it's a lot easier to tell them when we've got pictures to show them. And like COVID-19, it's not something we're going to forget about, but one day it'll just be our word about what happened. So for this project, I wanted to document COVID and the effects it's had on different business sectors, such as retail and hospitality, and even people individually affected, doing this through a street style of photography. So at first I was photographing anything related to the pandemic, whether that was the signs around, the floor markings, or just a person wearing a mask. I kept doing this idea with shoots until I pinpointed a particular area or idea that kept appearing in the work, which it did eventually, and that was reflections and lone figures. I think both were fitting ideas that kind of symbolise a greater meaning. The lone figures represent isolation, whether that's, the isolation felt by us all from being apart from friends and family, or the isolation that's required if you contract it, the 10-day period. Whereas the reflections that often appeared, they kind of offer an insight into this new simulated reality that we're all living in. You know, we're constantly questioning if this is a new normal and when or if things, you know, will ever return and we can just resume our pre-COVID lives. So reflected reality is the title I've given this series, because, you know, not only is this highlighting the reflections in the shots, but it explains how we will be forever reflecting on this time and looking back through this, you know, metaphorical window to what we've experienced and that I've created within the series. But yeah, thank you for listening and enjoy the rest of the exhibition.
Hello, my name is Hayden and my project is called All Creation. The meaning behind my project is to show my experience of the traditional art of kintsugi. This is translated as golden repair. This is an extension of another term known as wabi-sabi. Wabi refers to recognizing the beauty and simplicity, while sabi refers to the beauty revealed over time through use and decay. Together, it's the behavior of accepting imperfections and the beauty in flaws. The notion of kintsugi itself was created accidentally. When a Japanese emperor broke his precious ceremonial tea bowl, it was then reconstructed with lacquer and powdered gold, made in the form of what is known as kintsugi today. My reasoning for choosing to do this project was due to the limitations of lockdown, as I knew it would affect the amount of work I could produce. I thought doing something that didn't require traveling would be more appropriate. My images include bowls, plates, and cups that have either been previously damaged or ones I have destroyed myself. These were then repaired with resin and colored mica powder. I did deviate from the standard color of gold throughout the project, as a way of personalizing it to fit my style. Additionally, the final image shows all the ceramics I have broken over the course of the project in a structural format. If there is something this project has taught me, it's to be more accepting of imperfections and flaws, and allow myself to slow down and take more time to do things. When I was creating the images for this project, I felt a sense of unexpected calm. This is likely the result of being in full control of my environment, without any restrictions like time to limit me. This is quite different to the landscape photography I am used to. I would consider this to be one of the many positives that came from lockdown that I have produced. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the exhibition.
Hi, my name is Levi Kelton and I'm going to be talking about the practice that I've been working on. My practice is based around portrait photography and investigating mental health in the relation to emotions in order to showcase how an individual's expression changes over time due to their mental states. I decided to name this piece of work Revealing the Unknown. This was chosen because individuals with mental health issues tend to cover up their true feelings and emotions. This is in order to fit in or because they feel like they can't be themselves. This then allows the emotion to be completely unknown to them. In some occasions, this is only revealed when they are alone, or sometimes they never completely find it. It is dependent on the individual and if they are able to find the confidence within themselves to be who they truly are. Within this piece of work, I decided to focus on my own mental health. This is in order to completely understand why and how this occurs and how to portray the emotions as best as I could. In doing this, I faced a few challenges of my own. One of them was the fact that I don't like my picture being taken because I feel uncomfortable with the way I look in them. This is because sometimes I feel as though I look tired or just not pretty at all. I don't really allow people to take photos of me if I can help it because of this. So when I was completing this, I did find it very challenging to be proud of what I had produced. However, it did allow me to grow a little more confidence within myself. Completing this on myself really allowed me to fully understand what goes through an individual's mind and how this can affect their emotions, as they are constantly changing into different ones all the time, even in a short period of time. Sometimes it's not even noticeable. I hope you enjoy our exhibition and thank you for listening.
Hello, my name is Heather and the title of my project is Goodnight Little Mockingbird. And for my project I decided I wanted to experiment with different ideas behind dream and nightmarescapes, so I was trying to bring the two together to create something that is both ethereal and unsettling. I started off my project by taking self-portraits as well as portraits of my sister and overlaying images into the eyes, trying to create a fogged, dazed, cloudy effect, trying to create this illusion of being trapped inside a daydream and not knowing the difference between dream and reality. And then for my early nightmarescape experimentation, I started off by looking at very typical horror cliches and tropes, such as the monster under the bed, the monster in the bathroom, and having something else staring back at you inside a mirror. Though these are very typical cliched concepts, they're a very good place to start with nightmares, as they are all still ideas that people are afraid of. With the experimentation with the mirror that I did from working with these nightmarescapes, I found myself quite drawn to using this large framed arched mirror that I had in my house at the time. I wanted to try and create this idea of a doorway, with the superstitions that are around mirrors in general life. Found that this would be the perfect element for a fantasy dreamscape image. And I started off by having the mirror in various different locations within and outside of my house, as well as having the mirror on its own and with a subject behind it. I overlaid different images into the mirror to try and create this illusion of it being like a doorway, as well as experiment with different ideas of light going into dark, dark into light, and just pulling together ideas of dream and nightmare alike. Now this brings me to the image that you see in front of you today.
My name's Eleanor and my project for the virtual exhibition is called Cameralist. So from the beginning of this project I knew I wanted to challenge the idea of a photograph and what we think of as a photograph. So I wanted to do this through sort of ditching the idea of a camera completely, a traditional camera, and sort of using unorthodox methods to take photographs. So I did this mainly by using a scanner. I got a flatbed scanner and started experimenting with putting different objects and different things on top of it and what images this would create. While I was doing my research, I thought it would be nice to experiment with different sort of cameraless methods. So this took me right back to before the camera was even invented, and I started experimenting with chemical processes and things like lumen prints, so using specially treated paper to create images basically. And while I was doing this, I realised how similar that process was to the scanning, but the main difference obviously was that the scanner was digital, which allowed for a lot more sort of experimentation. So whilst I was doing the scanning, there was two ways I sort of worked with it. So the first way was just scanning an image and then in editing changing the way this looks by changing layers and displacing it. And then the second way I worked with the scanner was it gives you a sort of time window of about 10 seconds as it's scanning, which gives you a lot of opportunity to move objects, take objects out, put objects in, and just distort the image naturally. But after all this experimentation, I sort of narrowed down my practice into mimicking still life paintings, and this worked really well with the scanner because some of the qualities meant that there were really sharp areas when the object was making direct contact with the scanner, but also when it wasn't making contact it sort of gives this blurry look, which sort of forced me to think in a different perspective of how I wanted my images to look, and that led to the production of my final 3 images and my work for the exhibition.
Hi, my name's Amelia and I am a second year photography student at Sheffield Hallam University. I am here to chat to you about my exhibition project and kind of let you in on the ideas behind it and how I developed my ideas. So my project is called Pleasure in Calmness, and within this project I was really heavily inspired by an artist called Uta Barth. She kind of photographs ordinary, kind of ordinary, banal things that we don't really take much notice of, like lights reflecting on curtains, shadows on the ground, just reflections and things like that, things that we see every day that go unnoticed. I was really inspired by this and wanted to kind of do my own take on it. I really love sunsets, light, golden light, flowers, nature. I just adore all of that stuff. So I wanted to capture that and exhibit it for my exhibition. The idea behind my project was to emphasise the act of just looking at an image with no other reason other than to just look at it, not analysing it or anything like that, just simply taking the time to look at an image and appreciate it for what it is. I also wanted to kind of create a new appreciation for things such as light and shadows and flowers and things that we see all the time that we don't really take much notice of, like I said before, and kind of present them as something beautiful and something that'll catch your eye and just you'll get pleasure from looking at them. A lot of the shoots in this project weren't planned. I didn't particularly think of a concept for these images. I just simply saw the light coming in through the window, shining on, say, the flowers and the wall, different shadows that he created. I just found that really interesting and found it really beautiful. And so I decided to capture it. You'll see some of the images with the waves of shadows on the ground, on the concrete, the trees and things like that. I just simply went out walking with my camera. Had no idea what I was going to find. I didn't have a concept. I didn't go out looking for things for shoot. I just simply walked around. If I saw something that I found beautiful or interesting, I literally just took a picture. And that was that. I really wanted to emphasise the act of looking and getting pleasure out of looking at these images and actually people noticing them for their beauty and not ignoring them. Towards the end of my project, I had an idea to not just capture an image but create an image. So I originally, these pictures I wasn't going to use. I didn't like them. I didn't think they were good enough. Light was coming in through my window. I have a big bay window and it just created all these different shapes of light, and I just loved it. So I stood on my settees, tried shooting them from an angle. I kind of did a composite of several different images from this shoot and created my own image collage with all these different textures of light. Some of the images had the rug in, some of them didn't, with the carpet, and I just loved the way it looked and it was just different and unique. And I also got a lot of pleasure out of creating this image and shooting it as well. I really hope this is giving you an insight into my project and my ideas behind it. I really hope you like the images and I hope you enjoy seeing everyone's work. Everyone's worked really hard on this for a long time. Thank you so much for joining us today and bye.
Hello, my name's Conor Botherway-Hill and I'm going to be talking through my piece February from my project Mind's Eye. This project was based upon the dreams that I had in February that I wrote in my dream journal. This can be found on the 11 Fragments website on my artists page. This piece is conceptually seated within the surreal and the sublime, taking major influence from Edmund Burke's Terrible Objects. Also, Dali's and Magritte's Distortions of Space. In this piece, I wanted to showcase the terrible objects that presented themselves to me in my dreams, and offer the reader access into my subconscious mind, an intimacy that one generally is not offered.
Hi, I'm Cam. I'm one of the photographers for the Fragments photographic exhibition, and I'm going to be telling you about my work and how it came to be. So basically, my original idea was to aestheticize the document, and I wanted to do this by documenting the ongoing COVID pandemic. There was a few ways I could have went about doing this, but I ultimately decided on the small businesses and the shops basically that were affected by it, the ones that were forced to close. And so what I did was I photographed all of the signs that I could see. Any sort of closed sign because of COVID, any sort of COVID related sign, photograph them, and my plan was to just digitally edit them to make them as aesthetically pleasing as possible. This quickly changed. Pretty early on actually, it became a much more conceptual idea whereby I was going to introduce self-portraiture to it. But I wasn't really sure how to do this until I sort of started experimenting a bit, and then I decided to use collage. I had, all these photos. I had hundreds of these photos of COVID signs, so I had plenty of material to work with. So I created a collage just as a sort of experiment, really, to see how it would turn out, and it turned out really well. And from here, I sort of thought, how could I introduce a more conceptual idea? How can I introduce the self-portraiture? So the idea was to sort of have it kind of like wrapping itself around me in the photo, and that was going to be sort of a comment on the sort of like the overwhelming nature of it, the tediousness, the monotonous nature of it, sort of put into one lockdown, come out of it straight back into another one. And it was, on a much deeper level, it was a comment on, the isolation that we're feeling, the unknowingness, sort of like the frustration, trying to claw at something, anything really, just so we can know what was going on. And yeah, it sort of became quite a much more conceptual idea than just aestheticizing the document. I started, just sort of going with that idea, creating more collages, taking more self-portraits, and just sort of combining the two, and then I've whittled it down to these three. So we can see sort of there's a couple of sort of like hugging, basically sort of just like gentle, soft kind of stuff. And this is the sort of, the isolation, the sort of kind of like the acceptance of it. We've had to accept COVID as a part of our everyday lives now. So this is the sort of, the more accepting, gentle area of it. But then we've got one that's sort of, trying to claw at something, trying to grab at it, trying to understand it, trying to, sort of reach for any sort of understanding as to what's going on or what's going to happen. And then again, we've got a third one of, the sort of gentle hugging. And it's kind of goes from, being in the first lockdown, we were very accepting of it, we sort of thought, we get through this and then we can be back to normal. And then we sort of came out with this and went into another one, and people were frustrated, people were angry, people were upset. And I think most of all, we were all very frustrated, and that's sort of what the, the grabbing at it is. But then we went into another one, and we thought, I think this was the time where we realised we have to sort of like follow the rules, basically. We have to, all of us, understand that if we don't do the right thing, it's not going to end. We're going to carry on being in this lockdown. So we sort of, again, we came together, we understood, it's the more gentle side of it. I hope I've managed to capture sort of the document style, but also, the conceptual approach to it. And I really hope people enjoy. I really hope people get something from the, I hope it's something people can almost relate to. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.